right, Shalom. I want to give all the praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai Bahasham, Rakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who taught me this truth. Shalom to the hopeful elect. I'm back with another quick lesson through the Holy Spirit, the Rakakwadash. This article here is from newstarget.com. The headline, it reads, Muslim Brotherhood rallies behind Iran, calls for Islamic unity against Israel. Okay, so based off this headline here, I was thinking about the prophecy in 2nd Ezra chapter 15, where the Lord said he was going to raise up the dragons of Arabia, the so-called Arabic nations, to stand up against the Israel and U.S. hegemony as we see playing out right now. Okay, so before I read this article, I wanted to play this video again dealing with the Albert Pike plan for 3 world wars, okay? Because we're seeing the fruition of it play out on Earth right now, okay?
The Illuminati plan for 3 world wars. The First World War must be brought about in order to overthrow the czars in Russia and make that country a fortress of atheistic communism. The divergences caused by agents of the Illuminati between the British and Germanic empires will be used to foment this war. After the war, communism will be used to destroy other governments and weaken the religions. The Second World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences between the fascists and the political Zionists. This war must be brought about so that Nazism is destroyed and political Zionism is strong enough to institute a sovereign state of Israel in Palestine. During the Second World War, international communism must become strong enough to balance Christendom, which would be restrained and held in check until the time when we would need it for the final social cataclysm. The Third World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences caused by the agents of the Illuminati between the political Zionists and the leaders of Islam. The war must be conducted in such a way that Islam and political Zionism mutually destroy each other.
Right, so this is what we see right now. Okay, this article here is this is from MiddleEastEye.net. It says Muslim Brotherhood rallies around Iran, calls for Islamic unity against Israel. It says the group expressed its full support for Iran following threats issued by U.S. and Israeli officials against Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Okay, so it's getting ready to go down. You can look into what's it called, the axis of resistance. All right, those Arabic nations that are standing up to fight against the threat of Israel and the U.S. Okay, so that prophecy, as we're going to read in 2nd Ezra chapter 15, is going to be fulfilled, right?
Political Zionists and the leaders of Islam. The war must be conducted in such a way that Islam and political Zionism mutually destroy each other. Meanwhile, the other nations, once more divided on this issue, will be constrained to fight to the point of complete physical, moral, spiritual, and economic exhaustion. We shall unleash the nihilists and the atheists, and we shall provoke a formidable social cataclysm which in all its horror will show clearly to the nations the effect of absolute atheism, origin of savagery, and of the most bloody turmoil.
Yeah, so as they showed you, the devil Klaus Schwab, Bill Gates, and Yuval Noah Harari, okay, these are the devils that are going to make the world depend on their so-called scientific wisdom, all right, because these are your modern day Chaldeans, all right, your tech billionaires, your technocrats, okay, basically your left-hand priest, okay, your witches and warlocks, data interpreters, right? These devils are going to be responsible for pushing, this transhumanist movement, all right, which is pretty much Satanism. Okay, this is what they're doing as society collapses. All right, they're going to get rid of the Constitution, and they're the new leaders of the world. Okay, none of these devils have been, voted in or whatnot. Okay, these are the new authority for basically America in the world. Okay, so they're going to push a new, basically a new technocrat order, basically under this AI mass surveillance. We did a lesson going into Palantir, and it's all leading to the MOTB system. Okay, so this is what's going to be established as they bring forth this war, this nuclear war, World War III, and they totally destroy this American society. All right, so this is what he's talking about, and again, this is all being played out right now, right?
We shall unleash the nihilists and the atheists, and we shall provoke a formidable social cataclysm, which in all its horror will show clearly to the nations the effect of absolute atheism, origin of savagery, and of the most bloody turmoil. Then,
Yeah, real quick, let me just get a scripture about the Chaldeans, because those devils, will represent the modern day Chaldeans today. All right, the left-hand priests, the witches and warlocks, the astrologers. All right, these technocrats, right? But this is I typed in Chaldeans. This is Jeremiah 50:25. It says, "The Lord Yahweh Shemel Shai have opened his armory and have brought forth the weapons of his indignation, which is the ICBM nuclear missiles. For this is the work of the Lord power, Yahweh Shemel Shai of hosts, in the land of the Chaldeans." See? Verse 35, Jeremiah 50:35, it says, "A sword is upon the Chaldeans, saith the Lord Yahweh Shemel Shai, and upon the inhabitants of Babylon, and upon her princes, and upon her wise men." All right, and those Chaldeans represent, they go back to ancient Babylon's so-called wise men. All right, and they're in the forefront today, with this this technocracy, man. Okay, this digital society that they're trying to usher in, which is pretty much the beast system, right? Jeremiah 50:45, it says, "Therefore, hear ye the counsel of the Lord Yahweh Shemel Shai, that he have taken against Babylon and his purposes, and his purposes that he have proposed against the land of the Chaldeans. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Surely he shall make their habitation desolate with them." All right, so again, as we see, America is being drawn into World War III by Israel, man. All right, so it's all playing out, right? But again, those Chaldeans are in the forefront to bring in this, this new world order or whatnot.
everywhere, the citizens, obliged to defend themselves against the world minority of revolutionaries, will exterminate those destroyers of civilization. And the multitude, disillusioned with Christianity, whose deistic spirits will from that moment be without compass or direction, anxious for an ideal, but without knowing where to render its adoration, will receive the true light through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer, brought finally out in the public view. This manifestation will result from the general reactionary movement, which will follow the destruction of Christianity and atheism, both conquered and exterminated at the same time.
So there you go. It's all coming to pass, right? But going back to this article here again, Muslim Brotherhood rallies around Iran, calls for Islamic unity against Israel, right? Let's make this a little bigger. All right, so it says the Muslim Brotherhood, one of the most powerful political entities in the Middle East, has rallied around Iran in the wake of Israel's devastating strikes on the country and urged desperate Muslim groups to unite and confront the Zionist entity, right? It says in a letter addressed to Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei on Wednesday, the acting head of the movement, Salah Abdel Hag, said his group expressed, quote, full support for the Islamic Republic as Israel's assault stretched into a second week. It says Haig described Israel's attacks as a broader assault on the resistant axis in the region, saying they mark, quote, a new phase of aggression against Palestine, driven by Israel's goal of weakening regional powers with the backing of the United States and other Western states. It says, quote, we are one nation in the religious, spiritual, civilizational, and geopolitical senses alike, he said, adding that Israel, quote, does not differentiate between our ethnicities or sex. Our primary weapon is the unity of the Islamic Ummah, he said, before calling on Muslim forces to overcome past divisions and redirect their focus toward confronting the Zionist entity. See? So it's going down, man. These Arabic nations are standing up. All right. So let's get into that real quick. I just want to read that point here. All right. As we see this prophecy being fulfilled here in 2nd Ezra 15. Right. And actually, I want to read it in the GNT, which is the Good News translation. All right. Let's get that, which is pretty heavy as well. All right, so this is 2nd Esdras, 2nd Esdras chapter 15, and verse 28 in the GNT. And it reads, 2nd Esdras 15, verse 28, it says, then in the east, you will suddenly see a fearsome sight. All right, in the east, speaking about the so-called Middle East. Okay? It says, then in the east you will suddenly see a fearsome sight. It says Arab armies with many chariots will advance like dragons. Okay, going back into the dragons of Arabia. All right, these these Ishmaelite nations that are standing up. It says Arab armies with many chariots will advance like dragons. As soon as they start out, the sound of their hissing will spread across the world and bring fear and trembling to everyone who hears it, right? So again, as we see, the Muslim Brotherhood, all right, rallies behind Iran. All right, they're calling for all these Muslim, Arabic Ishmaelite countries to stand together against the Israel and the U.S. threat. Okay. It says, Slakia. It says, 2nd Esdras 15:30. It says the Carmenians, all right, which is the Persians, Iran. The Carmenians will come out of the forest in a fierce rage, like wild boars, advancing in full strength to attack the dragons. With their tusks, they would tear up a large part of Assyria, right, which goes into America. Okay? It says, verse 31, but the dragons will unite their forces, regain their former strength, and win the victory. They will turn and pursue the wild boars, right? So again, as we were just reading about the dragons, uniting their forces, right? That Muslim Brotherhood coming together. Okay? These Ishmaelite nations in Persia standing together. Right? Excuse me. Verse 32, it says, who will be thrown into panic, beaten into silence, and forced to turn and run. And what's heavy, matter of fact, let's read on. It says, the wild boars will be ambushed in Assyria, and one of them will be killed. This will bring fear and panic to their army and indecision to their king. See, and this is spiritual because we talked about how Iran has the sleeper cells in America already that are waiting to be activated, right? This is from thetimes.com. It says sleeper cells, threat of Iranian attacks in U.S. has never been higher. It says the Department of Homeland Security and federal law enforcement agencies warned of an increased threat of terrorist attacks on U.S. soil after the strikes on Iran. All right, so let's play that real quick. Okay, because the sleeper cells are here. They're here and they're ready.
All right, welcome back. Want to reset, talk about where we are now and where we might be going next when it comes to Operation Midnight Hammer and the situation in Iran. So taking a look once again to recap what we did over the weekend. The U.S. attacking 3 separate Iranian nuclear sites. Isfahan, where they got a bunch of underground tunnels with enriched uranium. Natanz, and then the big one at Fordow. That is where we used 12 different bunker busters, waiting for damage assessments from those. But the question is, what, if any, responses are going to be from the Iranians next? Keep in mind, we've got about 40,000 U.S. military personnel sprinkled throughout bases all within the Middle East, going from Turkey all the way down to Qatar and the UAE. Remember, back in 2020, it was Al Assad Air Base in Iraq, where the Iranians decided to shoot ballistic missiles in response to the strike against Soleimani. Then down here in Qatar, we've got Al Udeid Air Base. That is our biggest base in all of the Middle East. That's where CENTCOM also has some of their headquarters. The question also, what's going to happen here on U.S. soil? The potential threat of Iranian sleeper cells. We've talked about the open border the last 4 years. Take a look at this data. CBP sources telling Fox News from 2021 to 2024 under the Biden administration, just over 1,500 Iranians were caught by Border Patrol crossing the southern border illegally. Of that, almost half of them, 729, were released into the U.S. That is 48%. That also does not account for the more than 2 million known gotaways who slipped across the southern border during that time. For more on this and the potential threats to the homeland, I want to send it out to Mark Meredith, joining us live in D.C. this morning. Mark, good morning to you.
Bill, good morning to you. The FBI says it remains vigilant, and the Department of Homeland Security is warning there is a heightened threat given the developments in Iran. We're watching 2 potential types of attack here. The possibility, one, cyber threats to U.S. networks. The other, the possibility of sleeper cells targeting Americans here at home. Major cities, including New York, where you are, D.C. and Los Angeles, stepping up patrols near places of worship. NYPD also watching diplomatic sites around the country, around the city. And over the weekend, DHS put out a bulletin acknowledging the threat is real. DHS writing, multiple recent homeland terrorist attacks have been motivated by anti-Semitic or anti-Israel sentiment, and the ongoing Israel-Iran conflict could contribute to U.S.-based individuals plotting additional attacks. Some lawmakers fear the sharp influx of migrants into the U.S. over the last few years may have allowed Iran to send sleeper cells into the U.S. undetected. And as Bill mentioned, Fox learning many Iranian nationals detected crossing into the U.S. during the Biden administration were allowed to stay and not kept in custody.
Fortunately, they do have a right to be concerned. As you said, Joe Biden had a wide open border policy for 4 years. We know that terrorists tried to enter our country. Iran has a long history of terrorizing America going back 46 years, to include here in the United States.
In February, the White House warned of this very possibility. The National Security Team says Iran has also directed proxy groups, including Hezbollah's Islamic Jihad organization, to embed sleeper cells. And Bill, the threat extends beyond the obvious U.S. domestic targets. Military installations abroad, American diplomatic outposts all remain on high alert. Bill.
Yep, the issues at the border continue to echo with the situation right now. Mark Meredith, thank you. Good to see you.
Want to bring in Fran Townsend, former DHS advisor under President Bush. It's great to have you here. One of the things they did not mention is something that Iran is known to have some capabilities, but you could describe them, and that is the cyber capabilities. Could that hurt us here as well?
Sure. I mean, look, they've attacked U.S. critical infrastructure. They've attacked the financial institutions. J.P. Morgan suffered real damage. And so I think the private sector, too, has got to be on alert for retaliatory effects. I agree. We've got there's the potential for these sleeper cells that could be activated. But the FBI has the Joint Terrorism Task Forces, and the glory of those is you've got state and locals in there and DHS so that they're all working the problem together. This is not a new concern. And so I imagine long before the bombing, they were working to uncover sleeper cells.
So like I said last night, anything can happen. All right. Let me read some more and we'll finish that off. All right. But 2 Ezra 15 and verse 33 in the GNT again, it says the wild boars will be ambushed in Assyria, and one of them will be killed. This will bring fear and panic to their army and indecision to their king. So again, those sleeper cells, okay, they're scattered among America, all right, and they're ready. They're ready to do their bidding, you know, and this is what's causing the panic and the worrying amongst these American forces now, all right. It says, verse 34, it says, then suddenly clouds, terrible, angry storm clouds will cover the sky from one end to another, all right, going into the destruction from the missiles. Verse 35, it says, they will collide head on and release their violence upon the earth. The blood of war will be as deep as a horse's belly, all right? It's going to be a lot of death, a lot of destruction. Verse 36, it says, or someone else's thigh or a camel's knee. Everywhere on earth, people will tremble in fear at the horrible sight, all right? Because there's going to be so much destruction and disaster playing out across the earth, you know, dealing with this this nuclear war, World War III, right? And also the return of the Lord. Verse 38, it says, then great storm clouds will move in from the north and the south, and others from the west. It says, but the winds from the east will prevail and push back those angry storm clouds that were about to bring destruction. It says, verse 40, it says, huge, powerful, angry storm clouds will arise and ruin the whole world and its people. All right? That's total destruction. Nuclear war, the battles all around the earth, everything, man. It says a terrible storm of fire, hail, and flashing swords will come sweeping down on those who have power and authority. Every river will overflow into the fields and in the crops. All right. It says, verse 42, will demolish cities, walls, mountains, hills, forests, and crops. Right. So as the Lord said, you know, he's going to use this destruction to create a new heavens and a new earth. Okay, and this war and those missiles are going to do that. It says, verse 43, it says, this destruction will press on until it reaches Babylon and engulfs in it a raging storm of ruin. The dust and the smoke will form a great cloud reaching to the sky, and all the neighboring cities will mourn for Babylon, right? So, hey, this is the beginning of it. Okay, this prophecy will be fulfilled. See?
I do think the people the most at risk for a physical attack are our bases overseas and diplomatic institutions.
And when it comes to those concerns about potential sleeper cells, when I was down at the border, I met a lot of Iranians, and most of them seemed like pretty nice guys. They come up to the cameras and they spoke English. They said they wanted to flee the regime. I think a lot of the concern has to do with the gotaways, right? More than 2 million over the last 4 years. Those are people we never saw on our cameras. Those are people Border Patrol never caught. Those are people who paid the coyotes extra to get away from law enforcement.
That's right.
What are your concerns about that population?
So that's exactly the focus of the Joint Terrorism Task Forces, because you've got state and locals there who are closer to the communities, who have sources in the communities and can feed into the federal system that can bring resources to bear. And so I take some comfort in the fact, the other thing that the FBI brings with them is access to surveillance capability. So you can use the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. This is really what it was intended for, and to gather intelligence to identify those cells.
Take us to the region. You know it very well. One of the things here is that Israel had degraded the capabilities of Hezbollah and Hamas. Okay, so we have that. But there are other players in the region. President Trump was there 3 weeks ago. I think that those relationships helped in this situation because, as far as I can tell, they're being very quiet.
Right. Look, I think the long-term view in the region, I've spoken to 2 leaders in the region, is this is good for their security. They don't want to attract attention because they're so close to Iran. They don't want to have short-term or medium-term ballistic missiles falling on them. But they support quietly, to your point, Dana, the action that the president has taken. It protects not just Israel and us, but the entire region and the world.
Mm-hmm. Jasmine Crockett in the headlines once again with another comment she made. We'll play it. Want to get your thoughts on the other side.
Sure.
I know they may claim we law and order, blah, blah, blah. So go get the undocumented people and let's try to ship them out. Let me tell you something. They are not the people that are putting us in harm's way. It is him and his administration that is putting us in harm's way.
You want to go ahead and give us your thoughts on that?
It's sort of so ridiculous, right? She doesn't know that whether the undocumented, the ones who got away, are a threat or not, and that's the very point. Of course, the president has devoted resources, the FBI and DHS, to determine whether or not those people are a threat to us here in the United States.
Yeah.
Fran Townsend, it's so good to see you.
Good to see you.
And
Yeah, so there you go, man. All right. Again, another step closer to nuclear war. All right. So hey, the end is at the doorstep. Shalom.